Welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP. On today's topic, the demographical onslaught is heading toward American blacks overall. Again, the topic today is the demographical onslaught is heading toward American blacks overall. In this system of supremacy, the most awesome mental manipulation force that has ever existed. There is no comparison to the brilliancy of supremacy because it's still going strong and continue to cause chaotic confusion, fearness, apprehension, extreme self-confidence problems, especially among millions of African ancestors and Native blacks. And unfortunately, and I'm relating to this topic, the demographical onslaught. Yes, that's heading toward the American blacks overall. It is like a dinosaur overall destroying asteroid. And the asteroid symbolically is heading toward, which is demographically, the symbolicness is the asteroid relating to the overall destructionary agenda that is heading toward the American blacks overall. The dinosaurs obviously did not know there was a gigantic asteroid heading toward that direction. Multi-millions of Africans and Native blacks have no idea that symbolically the asteroid, the demographical asteroid, is heading toward their direction. Yes. Yes. That is why supremacy is the most awesome mental manipulation force that has ever existed. And that is why they already understand that mathematically, the American blacks and African ancestors, Native blacks overall will be finished up with more black pain, even more, which then leads to half a generation to one generation left for the overall cultural survivability of the American blacks, the African ancestors, Native blacks. Mathematically, it is not going past half a generation, one generation. I wouldn't even get into a piece of argument. A person will have more better opportunity to sit there and argue with a darn stone, to sit there and try to play some little games with myself. The last great hooray time frame for what could have been considered the black more unity was around the 60s. And then it subsided and then kind of sparked up for about a half a second and around the 80s a little bit and part of the 90s. And then supremacy was like, we're not going to ever allow that to happen. Supremacy, like, they will freeze most of this planet or send tidal waves in different places before they sit there and allow any type of African ancestry, partly unity, ever again. They will never allow that to happen again. And under this topic, they are going to utilize a lot of demographical changes. That's happening right before numbers of personnel who see and are listening to the observation of what is going on. And supremacy, they already understand that they want many, many African and Native blacks to become cultural zombies. Oh yes. Oh yes. And they're gonna have it that way. They're gonna make millions of African and Native blacks cultural zombies for not paying attention about the demographic onslaught that's heading toward their direction. And having to try to help as many other cultures first before they help their own cultures first. At the bottom of the darn list in health. At the bottom of the list in education. At the bottom of the list socially. All created to be that way. Even though the African and Native blacks has on the most historical, powerful history of no comparison of no other cultures in the country. Many have lost the self-confidence in themselves as a culture. And that is the brilliancy of that is the brilliancy of supremacy, the most awesome mental manipulation force that's ever existed. I'm going to read something from a book called Propaganda, because I'm not going to have the show go too long on this one. Because in his book Propaganda, just a piece of it, this cannot be read enough. From a book called Propaganda, just a few sentences. This book was written in the early 1921, around 1928, something like that. What was it? Around 1928. So that's almost about 4 generations ago, almost 100 years ago. This book was written. This powerful book was written. And I'm just going to read you just a few sentence parts, okay? Chapter 1, Organizing Chaos. Just a few sentences. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is a true ruling power of our country. Our invisible governors are in many cases unaware of the identity of their fellow members in their inner cabinet. The brilliancy of supremacy. They govern us by their qualities of natural leadership, their ability to supply needed ideals, and by their key position in the social structure. Whatever attitude one chooses to take toward this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the spirit of politics or business, in our social conduct or ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bond and guide the world. Supremacy, the most awesome mental manipulation force that has ever existed. And they understand because they're making sure to create this asteroid symbolic demographical onslaught that is heading toward the African and Native blacks as overall, to become more in a type of cultural zombie mindset, not knowing what direction to go, bumping into walls, running into cars. I mean, symbolically, right? But I'm saying not knowing who they are even more overall. It's going to happen. But how many African and Native blacks have to still help other cultures out, other ethnicities, helping however alternate lifestyle categories, etc. But that's not the topic for today on that. But the demographic onslaught is heading toward their direction. and there will be just a small amount of cultural survivors. That's it. It's a small amount of cultural survivors to carry on the last legacies of some of the powerful African and Native Black history. Because this is a definitely finishing move upon African and Native Black with the demographic onslaught. Let me read you something from World, what was it? World Review something. I was reading that, like something relating to World Population Review. Okay. Give me one moment here, because this is very, very important on this part. Let me read you something. Okay. World Population Review. Now, estimation. The U.S. population. Okay. This is as of, we're talking about, currently estimation, because you can go to another, resource and it might be plus or minus, but we're not going to go there on that. Okay. Because there's no such thing as a perfect number of scenarios. Okay. But we're talking about preponderance on this. But estimation is saying about 333 million personnel plus, right? Over 333 million personnel. Okay. It talks about how, unlike China and India, the U.S. population is expected to continue to grow throughout the century with no foreseeable decline. By 2067, the U.S. population is expected to surpass 400 million people. Now, definitely estimation, because overall, the way supremacy wants that to go, it's going to be more than that, or just it's a little bit more than that, but it's definitely not going to be way below that. Because again, demographical onslaught, they want this to happen, especially toward the African and Native Blacks. Okay. The population growth in the U.S. is mainly, listen, the population growth in the United States is mainly attributed to high rates of immigration. Let me repeat that. The population growth in the U.S. is mainly attributed to high rates of immigration. Demographical onslaught. Helping out others, right? While sitting there just telling many African and Native Blacks to go back to the back of the bus again, right? What an insult to those strong African and Native Blacks who had to go through formal segregation not a long time ago, that was still going on after slavery. And what was going on after slavery? That was supposed to have been ended in 1865, the Civil War. War's still going on. Numbers of African and Native Blacks were still in some type of form of slavery on some type of pseudo plantations, because those racial terroristic personnel did not even say anything to the post-Civil War still enslaved personnel that was on those plantations or any other places like that, because they wanted to keep that free labor. What other culture was still going through that after a formal ending of enslavement? Because what other culture was enslaved within this country like African and Native Blacks? What was that again? Don't think so either. But you still have numbers of African and Native Blacks still want to help all these other cultures that still did not even exist in the country in the Civil War. Even right before the Civil War, you still had most cultures and ethnicities that still did not exist in the country, with extremely few insignificant numbers of some other culture. Because the only person that was really coming over here, well, let me phrase that, was barely coming over, was a certain segment of Asian personnel in the gold rush, 1840, 1849. Only a certain segment of Asian population. So many others didn't even exist in Asian culture in the country in the Civil War times. Let alone for this common sense stuff. Just like you have good Asians and bad Asians. I mean, excuse me, that too. You have good Hispanics and bad Hispanics. Again, in the Civil War time, you did not have any significant numbers of Hispanics. So 1861, 1865, there still was no significant at all demographics of Hispanics in the U.S. So let alone before that. So how many personnel within Asian culture, how many personnel in Hispanic culture did even exist in the country in that time? And here it is, the 21st century. How many numbers of Hispanic personnel walking around talking about anti-Hispanic? How many numbers of Asian personnel talking about anti-Hispanic and getting and having got a bill passed specific for Asian personnel? The demographical onslaught is going to happen toward African ethnic blacks even more. It's going to happen. African ethnic blacks only have one generation left. That's it. And they are going to use, supremacists are going to use many other cultures, ethnicities, border breaking legal immigration personnel. They're going to use all types of personnel even more. And the sad part is there's millions of African ethnic blacks who still don't understand that they are being used. I did a show the other day, whatever it was, about the what was it, the International Tribunal, something like that, that found the U.S. guilty of crimes against humanity, something to that effect. But the whole point, some wording in there was about talking about toward blacks, brown, indigenous people. But then they was talking about 1951, and what the main thing was about 1951, a petition about toward the U.S. government talking about basically the treatment toward the Negroes. Nowhere did a petition talk about. It wasn't talking about that, especially what I just read, or what I was talking about on that petition. They weren't talking about brown people and indigenous people, whatever that's supposed to mean, because there are many African ethnic native blacks that have brown skin. There are black native personnel. So you see this trickery that's continuing to go on. It's like the supremacy understands. They know that it's like many African ethnic native black people just cannot do things for them, cannot do things for their own culture first. And that's why, again, the supremacists will be using even more using the demographical onslaught toward the American blacks to finish them big time, which then causes even more what? Black pain. Yes, more black pain. Let's continue to read. World Population Review. The United States demographics. Currently, the United States, and again, plus or minus. Currently, the United States is 60.4% white, according to the Pew Research Center. Racial profile will be vastly different by 2055. Whites will remain the single largest racial group in the U.S., but they will no longer be the majority. Growth in the Hispanic and Asian populations in the U.S. are predicted to almost triple over the next 40 years. By 2055, the breakdown is estimated to be 48% white, 24% Hispanic, 14% Asian, and 13% Black. Let me read that again. Currently, the United States is 60.4% white, to my estimation. According to the Pew Research Center, the country's racial profile will be vastly different. By 2055, whites will remain the single largest racial group in the U.S., but they will no longer be the majority. Growth in Hispanic and Asian populations in the U.S. are predicted to almost triple over the next 40 years on purpose. So by 2055, the breakdown is estimated to be 48% white, 24% Hispanic, 14% Asian, and 13% Black. So you're talking about now, it's estimated, what again, which is some trickery-based wording on that as well. So American Black folks, what, 12.5 to 14% of the population? What's been like that for however many years? Stagnant. On purpose. They want more stagnation. So by this estimation, Asians will have passed African estimated blacks. And certainly under the demographics of Hispanics, according to what I'm looking at, 24% Hispanics, which then is bypass blacks. African estimated blacks overall do not understand what is heading toward them. Just utilize what I just read. They're saying by 2055. It's 2021 now. As I said earlier in the conversation, African estimated blacks only have one generation and a half, half a generation to one generation. And I stand by that. I stand by that with 1,000,000%. African estimated blacks only have half a generation, one generation. So what I just read you, I'm saying that estimation. How are you going to explain that? Relating to this, the predicted, the growth in the Hispanic and the Asian population in the U.S. are predicted to almost triple over the next 40 years. 40 years is what? Remember, a generation is what? About 25 years? So again, it said the next 40 years, right? 40 years, about 2055. So you're talking about less than 2 generations. This estimation that Hispanics will beyond bypass black folks. Asians will bypass black folks. Because right now, what is it? The main demographic, which is common sense, is Caucasians under white, right? Then the second largest population, it was black beforehand for generations. And around about the plus or minus 2000, beginning of the 21st century, is when you start seeing a demographical change related to numbers of Hispanics that bypass black folks. You hear what I said? I hear it on relate. That ain't me. That's demographics. Around that beginning of 21st century, plus or minus, is when Hispanics bypass American blacks, who had already been the second largest population for generations and still was getting what before that? Black pain. And still got no reparations. And now the American blacks have fell to the third largest population? What do you think is going to happen? What? Positively? Being treated equally? Yeah, okay. Reparations? I don't think it's not going to happen. And the fourth largest population is Asians. The asteroidal, symbolically, asteroid is heading toward the American blacks overall. And supremacy, being the brilliancy as they are, the most awesome mental manipulation force ever existed. They are going to use and are using them now, and they're going to use it even more. Numbers of other cultures and ethnicities to simply even more bypass, even more, the American blacks. And millions of American blacks still don't understand they're being used. There is still too many internal problems going on within the African as Native blacks. Too many sellouts, too many internal problems, too many. And then for supremacy to use the demographical onslaught to finish up the American blacks overall is a brilliancy. To get millions of American blacks not to even see what is heading toward them. The demographical onslaught of finishing them up. You still have quite a number of African and Native blacks who still want to help out many other cultures first, who want to help out border breaking immigration people first, people sitting back laughing at American blacks overall. How do border this again? Can American blacks overall break immigration laws? And then this person's citizens and those personnel of other countries, be it across various borders or other parts of the world, do you think they're going to allow American blacks overall to break immigration laws, and their citizens are going to jump up and down, and political entities and other different people are going to sit there and just fall all over chairs, right? Swim whatever many lakes or whatever it is, rivers, to sit there and help out American blacks? You know better what the answer to that is. But this is what many African natives cannot help stop themselves, right? To help other people out first. That is some cultural mental sickness. There are good Hispanics and bad Hispanics. I don't know why you keep saying it's such infantile logic, just like you have good Asians and some bad Asians. And see, I don't play this little silly mental switchery game, okay? Because it's common sense. It should be common sense. There's some good Asians and bad Asians, good Hispanics and bad Hispanics. There are numbers of Hispanic personnel that can't stand other Hispanics. They can't stand them. There are other Hispanics who can't stand other Hispanics. There are numbers of Asian personnel that can't stand other Asian personnel. But that's rarely ever talked about. And how many personnel within Hispanic culture, how many personnel within Asian culture, I'm talking about the ones that are bad seeds who know who they are. They know the ones when they behind those closed doors, how they sit there and can't stand American blacks. They know who they are. And you got numbers of African and Native blacks smiling at numbers of Hispanic people's faces and numbers of Asian persons' faces. And don't understand how many can't even stand American blacks and are using them. Again, to some of the Hispanic personnel, that ain't about the nonsense. To some of the Asian personnel, that ain't about the nonsense. You keep doing your thing. But you don't get free cookies for that. You're doing it because you want to do that. Because if it was a lot of Asians that was about helping American blacks, if it was a lot of Spanish about American blacks, then where are they at? Where are they not jumping up and down toward the black political personnel and various other political personnel in general, saying, hey man, we want to see y'all give American blacks what they're entitled to, reparations. What was that again? Crickets? What was that? In the forest, can't hear nothing? See, I have to use logic and logical analysis. There are some good Hispanic personnel and some really good Asians. and you keep doing your thing. Now, but with that being said, they also understand, again, numbers of good Hispanics, there are quite a number of bad Hispanics who can't stand other Hispanics. There are numbers of good Asian personnel that know there's other Asian personnel that can't stand other Asians. So I'm not going to play that. And for some, well, not for some odd reason, it's not an odd reason, all it's created that way. And it's something internal that is off, that's been generationally wired off within millions of African and Native blacks to keep wanting to help other people out first. That is cultural mental sickness. I want you to imagine so for a second what I'm going to show you, okay?
Oh, I come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee. As I grind to Louisiana, my true love for to see. Oh, it rained so hard the day I left, the weather it was dry. The sun so hot I froze to death. Susanna, don't you cry. Oh.
Okay, let me stop that because it was freeze up my side, so I'm not quite sure it froze up when you look at that video. So let me try it again.
Oh, I come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee. As I grind to Louisiana, my true love for to see. Oh, it rained so hard the day I left, the weather it was dry. The sun so hot I froze to death. Susanna, don't you cry. Oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. I've come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee.
Blackface at the finest of minstrelness shows. Please show where there was a comparison of brown face. Show where there's a comparison of yellow face. I said comparison. Don't even think about bringing up some rare caricatures or talking about, well, what about the Asian that had this? Do you hear what I said? I said, show me a comparison. That show me where brown face was a comparison that predates blackface minstrel shows. Because there's no such thing. Show where you had personnel within predominant culture that was going around in those 1800s to personnel that had Hispanicness in them, and he was going around to see how they were acting and then copy them and start doing buffoonery things. I don't think so. Show me where numbers of predominant-based personnel culture was going into what we call Asian communities in those 1800s, looking around to see and copying their, just copying them, how they were looking and acting. And then all of a sudden, they started doing Asian minstrel shows all over the place. People started doing brown face minstrel shows, or should I say, going back, they started doing yellow face minstrel shows, because there is no such darn thing as that, of no comparison toward blackface and black minstrel shows. Do you see that ridiculous enough of sitting there, how millions of African and Native blacks sitting there helping out other cultures who have not had to go through even not half a piece of what the American black folks have had to go through for generations, and surely do not have the historical significance and powerhouse history in the U.S. that the American blacks have. And how many personnel within how many other cultures sit there and sit back and ride the coattails left and right, jump on the wagon, get in the car, get on the bus, go into the buildings to see what black folks are doing, copying them, looking at them, emulate them, but do not want to be like them. And they go back home to their own environments, their own cultures. And the sickness as some of these other personnel that try to emulate blackness, right? Especially in certain parts of music. The sickness of that, right? How many numbers of Asian personnel try to emulate black folks? How many numbers of Hispanic personnel try to emulate black folks? And change the dynamic. How many black folks try to emulate Hispanics? That makes no even sense. How many American black Asians? That doesn't make any sense, does it? Do you see the cultural mental sickness of trying to help again other cultures first? Let me play you something else for a second.
We remain a hunted people. Now you think you have a destiny to fulfill in this land that historically has been ours for 40,000 years. And we're a new mestizo nation. This is our homeland. We can't.
Okay, that's freezing up. Let me try it one last time before I go into something else.
We remain a hunted people. Now you think you have a destiny to fulfill in this land that historically has been ours for 40,000 years. And we're a new mestizo nation. This is our homeland. We cannot, we will not, and we must not be made illegal in our own homeland. We are not immigrants that came from another country to another country. We are migrants free to travel the length and breadth of the Americas because we belong here. We are millions. We just have to survive.
Was that not very clear? And the white lies in that. What we call Hispanic personnel was not in the Americas 40,000 years ago. That is ridiculous. That is beyond illogical. 40,000 years ago, there would be no such darn thing as what we call Native Americans. And so Native Americans, what we call Native Americans, would have predated what we call Hispanics. So how can you be here 40,000 years ago before what we call Native Americans? What sense does that make? Do you see how that makes no sense? But then you got personnel within certain parts of Asian culture, certain parts of Hispanic culture. They know who they are, the ones who know. They can't stand the American black. And you just heard right there, some personnel just buying the time. That there are personnel who understand, again, the demographical onslaught for their own personnel takes precedence over anything internal for their culture. They don't care about their numbers there are some good Hispanic persons. They don't care about that. They say, we don't care about that. It is what is best for the overall Hispanic culture. Numbers of Asian personnel, they don't care about numbers of Asians that are about, hey man, they're about goodness, and hey man, they like to know the American blacks, but they say, but the C's within other personnel within various Asian cultures, like, they don't care about that in this Americas. Numbers of them are about their Asian cultures, their economics, their socialness, their education. Oh, yes. But millions of African enslaved native blacks still haven't got it yet. Culture first. Now, again, the humanity part is, it will be nice ideology that many cultures and, obviously American blacks just be able to talk with each other and get along with each other. That's fine, but it's about culture survivorship first. Right? And getting to know each other's cultures. Yes, that is a good thing to be able to do. But you do not put another person's culture above that other person's culture. Do you see the nonsensical part of that, right? No other culture is going to put another culture above them. At the same, but numbers of African and native blacks do that. Do you see the cultural mental sickness of that? And it is an historical insult to the American blacks' ancestors who went through all that formal black pain that couldn't even go to any movie theater they wanted to go to, couldn't go to any park they wanted to go to, couldn't go to any swimming pool they wanted to go to, generations of enslavement, all that kind of stuff. before many other cultures even exist in the country. And still, present day 21st century, you got millions of African ancestral Native blacks that can't help but try to help other cultures first. That is cultural mental sickness. What I just sit there and showed you is called Aztlan. Azlan. It's called Aztlan. What that means is that there's a certain segment of how you want to call Hispanics that are about demographics, mostly in the southwest corner of the country. That's not limited to that, but that is some of the foundation of Aztlan. And that's spreading over different places. Best believe that's spreading. And the personnel within certain parts of Hispanic culture know that, right? And numbers of African and Native blacks don't understand. There are some good Hispanics and bad Hispanics. There are a number of the bad Hispanics that can't stand American blacks. They can't stand them. See, there's no comparison. They understand there's no comparison of the historical powerhouse of the African ancestral Native blacks. Many of them understand that, and there's some jealousy to that. Don't get it confused. Don't get it confused. So that was called Aztlan. And then you start going to numbers of, let me play something else. Let me play something else for a second here. Okay, I don't know if that went there. I don't know from my side. It's looking like it's freezing, so I don't know from your side it's freezing. But let me try this one last time for this. Now, I don't know if this is freezing your side. I'm just letting it play. Now, I'm sure you're seeing this or someone's telling you about this. Now, I want you to imagine if this was African ancestral Native blacks breaking border immigration laws. How fast do you think the various political personnel will try to find some way, or they would find some kind of way of reducing this down and stopping this? This is not some rare occurrence. This is happening. Border breaking immigration personnel sit back laughing. And by the way, see this little disgusting game, but it's brilliancy because supremacy makes sure this happens. Have you noticed that recently? Again, this has been what? November the 10th, 2021. You haven't heard anything recently about, they're separating the children? You haven't heard anything about caravans coming from different other places as you heard not too long ago, a couple of years ago, within a year and a half, whatever it was. Right? You're breaking up families, separating the children. You haven't heard that before, right? See, supremacy is brilliant. Same game. There were several years before that they were sitting there talking about again. There's a caravan coming up. There are some different caravans coming to the north. Why are they doing it? They want better lives. People sitting there showing these. Anyway, I'm going all that. But caravans or whatever other personnel that's coming up north. And also, they used to talking about separating of the children. We don't need to separate the children. They was doing that several years ago. So every so amount often, they'll bring it up, right, to elicit emotional response, right, and which includes numbers of African and Native blacks. We must help them out. Who's helping American black kids out when they're getting separated from their families? Who's helping them out? Who's helping out when African and Native blacks are being separated from families for maybe something, small or whatever it is? Who's helping them out? Sickness. And watch how, somewhere in the near future, by design, supremacists are going to jump up again and make sure they promote it. Oh, they're separating children again. Watch, it's going to happen again. Some near future going to do it again. And by the way, this was a long time ago. This was brought up that they were sitting there talking about how at the border, there's however known the personnel at that particular example, where they was finding out that however many of the children that was being bought over by adults wasn't even a parent or a guardian or a grandparent or uncle or aunt. They found out that they weren't even connected that way. Did you hear what I said? But have you noticed that do you notice that many of the media and various other personnel didn't bring that up? So what a brilliant tactic these personnel are doing. Just pulling those heartstrings out. What, you think people are still not breaking immigration laws still right now? What's the other darn day, not long ago, that there's some kind of legal scenario where you had a few types of personnel that was trying to bring legalness. Border breaking personnel have the freaking audacity to try to bring some legalness to sit there and say, I think it's like $450,000 or something. That personnel was trying to get some legalness, right? To reward border breaking personnel because some of them were separated from their families and they want to get paid by taxpayers' money, the American taxpayers' money, that border breaking personnel thought they were supposed to get $450,000 because some of them were separated from their children for breaking border immigration laws, using their kids as pawns. How disgusting is that? No, I can't be mad at things like that. That's a brilliant, sick game. And you think border breaking legal immigration personnel care about anything about American black children? And by the way, who are these people trying to escape from in various types of borders? Who are they escaping from? Who's giving them political violence? Who is giving them that? I sit there and tell you, logically, people that look like them. People that look like them. Do you see the hypocrisy of this? People that look like them is giving them political violence, giving them violence, sitting there treating them bad. And then what does many types of media places and other places, they want to show some popper looking version of what we call Hispanics, numbers of them. They want to show some popper looking versions. Popper versions. Oh man, what a game. And then it brings me back, I'm trying to finish up something. Again, good Asians, bad Asians. Not going to go into all that. I've already talked about that. Because you got millions of African and Native blacks got a problem with not understanding that there's a number of Asian personnel that can't stand American black folks. Can't stand them. Can't stand them, numbers of them. But you still got numbers of Africans and Native blacks still talking about people of color. That will include numbers of Hispanic personnel, numbers of Asian personnel, would it not? Because based upon melanation of the skin, not original melanation of the skin as American African and Native blacks, original blacks, however the words, with the beautiful origination melanation skin. With somebody brown part, again, does not American blacks, Aboriginal blacks, African and Native blacks house brown skin as well, numbers of personnel. See, well, this game is ridiculous. But again, let me just show you something. Let me just show you something here for a second. Okay.
What's the issue?
What's up?
Why are you coming over here?
I just want to see what you guys are taking pictures of.
Why is it your business?
Oh, you know what?
Now, like that was freezing up again. I don't know, if I kept letting that show there, is it going to show or not? Let me try this again.
What's the issue?
What's up?
Why are you coming over here?
I just want to see what you guys are taking pictures of.
Why is it your business?
Oh, you know what? This is my home.
Okay, mine too. Why are you taking pictures
Where
of
you
me?
live?
I live in Scottsdale. Why are you taking pictures of me?
Michigan plates?
Yeah. Why are you taking pictures of me?
Well, you know what? We've had problems here.
I don't care. You don't know me. Why are you taking pictures of me? And I don't know you. Do you know a lot of white men are doing racist things in this world, sir?
No.
You don't know that? You're not aware of that?
I'm a racist.
You are a racist.
I'm a racist.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay?
Did you hear what was said? The person relayed that they were racist. Was that person not from the Asian culture? But where is the Pacific African ancestry Native Black bill related to try to dwindle down or protect specifically American blacks? Where is that bill? Do you see the hypocrisy of this? It's like you can imagine the gigantic moon-sized slap in millions of African ancestors Native Black faces that whatever number of black political personnel, many of them, and other personnel sit back ain't doing nothing for American blacks. But how many jumped on board signing that bill specifically for Asians to about, oh, stop Asian hatred? What did I sit there to show you? Look, let me play this again. I gotta, hold on. Let me play something else. Hold on. This thing keep freezing up on what's going on with this. Let me try it again.
You know what? Y'all getting I'm a female, so I'm only female. Are you serious? Yes, I did. No, I did not.
I don't know why this thing is keep freezing up. Because again, from my side, it looks like it's freezing up. I'm gonna try this one last time for this part.
You know what? Y'all getting I'm a female, so I'm only female. Are you serious? Yes, I did. No, I did not. You hit me. Oh, you getting a whole lot. Get the fuck off me.
Uh-oh. 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 Is she gonna be reminded?
I cannot believe it. You asked me, I was not stealing. No, I was not. You checked my purse. Get off. You asked me. You're tripping.
Did you not see that? So you got numbers of Asian personnel that got this specifically Asian bill about, oh, y'all stop, anti-Asianness, anti-Asian hatred. You gotta stop this Asian hatred. Get a bill passed. Didn't take long to get passed. What did it show you? You see this example as well. You see this particular Asian personnel squeezing that head of this black woman like you want to pop a darn cork off. Squeezing. What'd she say? Oh, she wanted to get out that squeezing. Where's the stop hatred of blacks by numbers of Asians? Where is that at? Where's all the conversation about numbers of Asian personnel that's shown and still do show hatred toward American blacks? Where is that at? I'm not talking about some of the good ones out there that ain't doing that. Man, go jump into a volcano with that nonsense. See, that stuff makes me sick when people try to play that game. I'm not the one to keep trying to play that game too. I'm just not. You have a better chance to go jump into a volcano with lava flowing and sit there and try to survive, which obviously you can't, than to sit there and play that game with me. I'm not one. Go down the street somewhere and go mess with somebody else on that. Because when people talk about African enslaved Native blacks, oh, remember how many times you heard numbers of Asian personnel talking about black folks and they need to do something about this hatred that black folks are doing toward Asian people. Are you disgusting? When again, crime statistics show the number one race in the country that have the most racial hatred put against them is not Asians. It is blacks. 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 Has the most racial hatred toward them. So how in the toes, half a tongue left? Anyway, how in the toes tongue? Or toes eyebrow? Can this not be obviously seen? It is an insult to the ancestors of the African ancestral native blacks to allow this disgustingness to not be called out. And the African ancestral native blacks, I'm not talking about the sellouts. They are like parasites. Parasitic. Sellout blacks are parasitic. Because they're worthless. Well, worthless to numbers of American blacks. But they are used by numbers of personnel within the Panama-based culture and other personnel, whoever, to use against their own people. And eventually they'll be just discarded. And they don't even get it. How many sellout numbers of pseudo-black personnel with only the blackface only have gotten reminded, and they try to swarm their way back into the culture to get that right. So anyway, sorry, I just wanted to relay that over. So what I just showed you, all those things, because that's why I have to show those kind of things, because historical timepiece purposes of things like this is very important, because supremacy understands that in society, I'm not talking about health-wise, I'm talking about in general, but especially toward African and Native blacks have this short-term memory of black pain that keeps happening to them every freaking day, but still continue to keep trying to help other cultures first and ethnicities. That is culture mental sickness. So I hope this was an interesting show on that, and I wanted to finish the show from something that cannot be said enough, from what they call the white man's Bible. And it was around 1981. It's called a white man's Bible. The N-word or N-word. We use the term N-word deliberately in this book and recommend its usage in general conversation. As we have stated in the previous chapter, the second dumbest creature on the face of the earth is one who can't or won't recognize his enemies. And the dumbest of all is that creature which will actively collaborate with his enemies for destruction of his own race. The African ancestral native blacks only have half a generation to one generation left. Let me repeat this, not stand by what I say on this, because I'm observing this. African ancestry, native black personnel only have half a generation to one generation. And I wanted to make sure to try to do this show today. And I was trying to make it extremely shorter. But you see, it's almost close to an hour. But again, this is for historical timepiece purposes, because be it a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 6, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe someone comes across this show and looks back and say, wow, this person was speaking some reality, and they saw what was happening, what was coming toward the direction. African ancestors, native blacks only have half a generation, one generation left for overall complete destruction of any type of overall unity. And many will be like cultural zombies in the culture, with few exceptions, survivors going on. since in half a generation, one generation left at most, and it will be most likely less than one generation. Because again, remember, African descent, Native blacks, or a person who don't know, Caucasian personnel is first. And again, that's some trickery based word because remember, you have numbers of Hispanics that can be classified as white that also hide within the culture of whiteness under race. How many personnel don't understand that game? There are numbers of Hispanic personnel that hide within the classification of white and play both sides. Go toward Hispanics, then go toward white. Okay? You get high numbers of personnel within certain parts of Asian culture who want to be honorary personnel within a culture of predominant-based culture. Another topic that really people don't want to discuss. And then people try to play little trolling games. Oh, this person talks like that. But at the same time, how many of the same numbers of personnel don't have a problem talking about, oh, well, black folks do this and black folks do that. See, person can jump into a lake of fire with the nonsense. I'm just not that kind of person. People can be fooled on different things. I'm saying, but there are certain things I just can't be fooled on. This is some of those things right there. You're not going to play silly games with myself because I understand it's very well relating to supremacy and how they use and will be continue to keep using the demographical onslaught toward the American blacks overall. So for what I just relayed on this show, it should be very obvious. It should be very obvious. African ancestors, Native blacks only have half a generation, one generation. Mathematically, that is going to happen. Doesn't matter what somebody denial or deflection or it doesn't matter. Half a generation, one generation. Remember when I read you earlier from that World Population Review, I said something earlier about their estimation amount of whites will be this, Hispanics will be this, Asian will be this, and blacks will be this. What happened? So you go from whites being first now, Hispanics being second, blacks being third, Asians being fourth. The people's estimation in a couple of generations, whites still first, Hispanics being second, Asians being third, and then fourth being blacks. Do we not understand this is historical onslaught, destruction toward American blacks? I just hope, I don't know how numbers of African and anybody's going to explain to the youth that are, like infants now as they get older, how they're going to explain why are at that time the American blacks in such even more overall, in such even more direness. Why is it that even more numbers of other cultures will be showing American blacks overall more racism toward them? How are you going to explain that then? Even more still, numbers of personnel within predominant-based culture will be showing even more black pain to American blacks. How are you going to explain it then? So again, I say, well, I was going to say, thank you for tuning into the show. I just hope this was interesting. Thank you.